you ever feel like you're stuck? Like you're playing this game, but you don't actually know the rules? Or you're just running on a treadmill that someone else is controlling? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going to talk about how to break free from the system, but here's the twist, without actually having to leave it.
I mean, let's be honest, you can't really escape it, right? The idea of just dropping everything.
And just, moving out to the forest, that's a nice fantasy, but for most of us, it's just that, a fantasy. And you can't just unplug completely either. The system, it's everywhere. It's global, it's digital, it's woven into pretty much everything we do. So trying to just opt out entirely, it's not going to happen. But here's the thought. What if that's the wrong goal in the first place? And this right here, this is the whole key. Real freedom isn't about escaping the world. It's about changing your relationship with it. It's all about taking back control, not from the outside, but from the inside out. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get clear on what this system really is. Then, we'll go through 5 steps to freedom. And finally, we'll talk about how to start playing the game consciously. Okay, first up, what is the system really? It's easy to picture some secret cabal in a dark room pulling all the strings, right? But the truth is actually way more subtle and, in a lot of ways, a whole lot more powerful. So forget about those guys in the boardroom. The system isn't a who, it's a what. Think of it more like a giant machine. And this machine is built out of these impersonal forces. Things like economic pressure that kind of nudges us into certain jobs, or the algorithms that decide what pops up in our feeds, and of course the social pressure that shapes what we think is important. So what's the fuel for this machine? Well, it's us. It's our own human nature. It runs on our most basic predictable drivers, our need for money, our desire to be liked, and that deep, deep fear of losing our status or being left out of the group. And here's the thing, because these feelings are so primal, so fundamental, most of the time we just react without even thinking about it. We're just on autopilot. And that autopilot mode, that's exactly where the control is. It's the little crack where the system gets in and steers our behavior. So if autopilot is the problem, then being conscious, waking up at the wheel, is the solution. So let's get into the actual playbook for this. We're talking about 5 steps to achieve what you could call psychological sovereignty. Okay, so the journey looks like this. First, we have to actually see the triggers. Then, we learn how to detach from that emotional hook. After that, it's all about reclaiming our attention. Then, we get smart about understanding incentives. And finally, we build an internal stability that just can't be shaken. All right, step 1 is all about becoming a detective of your own mind, because you can't break free from something if you don't even see it, right? So just start noticing those little moments, that sudden flash of outrage you get from some post online, that little pang of anxiety when you see someone else's perfect life on Instagram, that little rush you get from a bunch of likes. Just notice it. That's it. That's the first step. Okay, step 2 sounds almost too simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Once you notice that trigger, just pause. Do nothing. Just for a beat. Create a little space between the thing that happened and your usual automatic reaction. That tiny little gap, that's everything. That's where your freedom lives. It's the space where you get to choose how to respond instead of just letting your programming run the show. Step 3? This one is huge. We have to really get our heads around the fact that today, right now, your attention is way more valuable than your money. I mean, there are trillion-dollar companies fighting a war, literally a war, to capture and keep it. Why? Because what you pay attention to, that's what shapes your thoughts, your beliefs, and, yeah, ultimately your entire life. And if you don't believe me, just look at this. Look at where our attention actually goes. How much of that is a conscious choice? Almost none of it. The vast majority is just consumed, eaten up by feeds and news cycles that are specifically designed to keep us hooked, scrolling, and reacting. So reclaiming your attention is about deciding consciously where you're going to spend this incredibly valuable currency. All right, on to step 4. This is where we need to do a little upgrade to our thinking. See, when we feel like we're being controlled or manipulated, our first instinct is to ask this question, right? Who is doing this to me? We start looking for a villain to blame.
But there's a much more powerful question to ask, and it's this one. Instead of looking for a bad guy, look for the incentives. Ask yourself, what behavior is being rewarded here? What is this news article or this app or this company policy designed to make people do? When you see the incentives, you suddenly see the hidden structure of the game, and you stop taking it all so personally. And that brings us to the final step, step 5, becoming unshakable. See, the system loves it when we're emotionally all over the place. Why? Because people who are reactive are predictable. So the ultimate act of rebellion, the ultimate act of freedom, is to build your own internal stability. We're talking emotional regulation, some financial discipline, and thinking for yourself. The difference is simple. A stable person chooses their actions, while an unstable person just reacts.
Okay, so once you start putting these steps into practice, something really cool happens. Your whole relationship with the system, it just changes. You're not trying to fight it anymore. You're not trying to run away from it. Instead, you're learning how to play the game, but this time on your own terms. And really, it comes down to this fundamental choice. Are you a pawn or are you a player? A pawn just gets moved around by all these forces. They're consumed by the media. They're emotionally dependent on social media platforms. They chase money just for the sake of it. A player, on the other hand, sees that all of these things are just tools. They use media to learn, not to be told what to think. They use platforms to actually connect with people. And they use money as a resource to build the life they actually want to live. So, in the end, breaking free isn't about some big, dramatic act of rebellion. It's not about storming the castle. It's a quiet, internal revolution. It's the day in, day out practice of being aware, having the discipline to manage your own emotions, and having the wisdom to be really, really careful about what you let into your mind. Look, the system, this game, it's not going anywhere. That's a given. But your relationship to it, that can change completely. And honestly, that's the only kind of control that really matters. So the question isn't, how do we stop the game? The real question is, starting right now, how are you going to play?